Hi everyone, it's a Thursday night, 7 o'clock in the evening, South Africa time. We're going to be talking Women's Rugby World Cup. And once again, I'm joined by Harry Jones. We had a great chat last week, thoroughly enjoyed it. He built me up for the first weekend of the Women's Rugby World Cup that I was pretty excited about it. And having watched most of the games, I must tell you that I'm probably more excited about the Women's World Cup than I am about any of the men's rugby taking place this week. So looking forward to this chat. Harry, welcome back to the show. How are things in your part of the world?
Yeah, how's it, Brent? Stateside, everything is good. It's the perfect weather time of the year, but I think you're right. I've always been interested in women, but I've never been interested in women's rugby so much until recently. And I actually did the work. I actually watched matches. I stopped having prejudices, preconceived. One of those, I thought it's not going to be physical. Hey, it's plenty physical. These guys, these women out there mooring each other. That's not an issue at all. I think you'll probably find, most of your viewers and guys will find, if you haven't watched much of the women's game, what's really different is the kicking game is not very well developed. And some of the tactics are not. It reminds me of Annika Sorenstam saying she could play on the men's tour in golf. The problem was she wasn't as good a putter and a short game player. She thought it would be the opposite. So I think the power game, the lineouts, the scrum is coming along in the women's game, but sometimes you're going to be screaming at the TV going kick, and then you realize when they kick, it's partly because the distance is not very big. But I don't know about you, but I really thought some of those games were crackers last week. Really good.
Yeah, certainly. We'll touch on some of them as we go as well. But just first of all, hats off to you there, Harry, and a few of the other boys like Henrik and that really liked Wales last week. I must say, it looked good early. I made it the best bet in the newsletter, and for anyone watching the show for the first time, there's a link to the free Good for the Game newsletter down below. We just have a bit of fun, a best bet and an acca each week. But Wales were all over them early, but Scotland came back and actually dominated that second half. And in the end, it took basically an injury time penalty. And given the standard of kicking, which I've got to say hasn't been great for posts and that was a belter of a kick. That reserve scrummy put her hand up and just stepped up and whacked it over. It was a brilliant kick.
Yeah, with everything on the line, the whole cup on the line. Wales, Scotland, and Australia in that pool, none of them can actually afford to drop a match. And if they do, then the rest of the tournament's knockout for them. I think you had a question online, Brent, about how you configure the knockout rounds. So it's the three pool winners, the three pool runners up, and then the two third place teams with the highest competition points. And if there's a tie there, the break goes to head to head, who won that match, then best points difference, then best try difference, then most points scored. At that point, probably you're not going to have a tie. And then the final tiebreaker is the world rugby rank. But then you reseed everything. So you're going to have the pool winners 1 to 3. You're going to have the runners up 4 to 6, and the third place team 7 to 8, and it reshuffles. So then you're going to have, first seed versus 8, second versus 7th, third in the semifinals. So under that theory, New Zealand and England should not face each other until the final unless something very strange happens.
Unless, because I was looking at that, because eventually I did find out, and it was frustrating me that I couldn't find out, because what I was trying to determine exactly that, whether and the men's draw, it's pretty obvious. If they top your group, you can figure out where you're going to go. I guess the only thing is, if and I think off the top of my head, it'll be Canada who would probably top the other group. So I guess when they rank them at the end, they actually put all of the teams together. Yes, if you top your group, you go through, but they're going to have to rank 1, 2, and 3. So if, for example, Canada had a better points difference than New Zealand, for example, and New Zealand might finish third on the log, then instead of second, and all of a sudden things might change. I don't know. It's an interesting one, but yeah, it certainly is going to be good to watch, and I'm thoroughly enjoying the tournament. But let's get stuck into the matches itself. Welcome to everyone watching on the live chat. Mark, you there now? What time is it there for you, Mark? Probably about midnight. I know you normally get up in the early hours there to watch the handicap show, which is, of course, coming at 9. But let's start off with this game. Scotland plus 21.5 against Australia. I think the handicap here, Harry, opened up even mid-20s. There's been plenty of support for the Scottish. Most of the comment that I've seen are saying, gee, these Northern Hemisphere sides have been potentially underestimated. That being said, sure, but I was impressed by Australia in that first 20 minutes against New Zealand. I actually wondered if the bookies had the wrong favourite at that point. They were superb.
Yeah, that was a really interesting match. It didn't start according to the script of New Zealand, obviously. We can do the cliche of two halves, but The irritating issue, I think, maybe for the Wallaroos was, it was like a brave loss. And they're looking back now and saying, with better tactics, they might have been able to hold that lead. They just kept doing the same thing, and then they got tired. And the differences between the professional teams like New Zealand and Australia is the fitness is one. I mean, what would you go back in time, Brent? I'm not going to put you on the spot, but when you were 25, 26 years old, and if I said I'll pay you £15,000 if you win, what would you have been willing to do? I mean, it might have been some obscene things, right? So there's a big difference when there's a pot at the end. New Zealand players are paid. Some of them are paid more than Super Rugby players on the men's side. So they are fit, and you cannot go toe-to-toe with a New Zealand team for 80 minutes. I think there's a difference with Scotland. I think the Wallaroos can do what they did last week against Scotland, and it will actually work. If they come out and put 17 points on Scotland and then dare Scotland to catch them with the game, probably be more like a home game for Wallaroos, I actually think it's going to be a comfortable win. I'm really surprised by the 21 10.5 points. So the women's game is very different, actually. Possession is vital. You don't want to give the ball away, and you want to control the game and have the ball. So I think possession is queen here. And when you look at the Scotland team against the Wallaroos, I think it could come down to that. Who can keep the ball, hold the ball, and do enough with it? I think you probably saw that wing, Wallaroo wing, Bien Tarita, just running over people. She fended Portia Woodman twice. A lot of the best players on both of these sides are going to be sevens players. So I think you're going to see a lot of action on the wings. I think the fitness is going to be the issue here. Scotland and Wallaroos have both lost their last 7 matches. So, it's a really tough one to pick. I think maybe what I'm saying here is I would not put a lot on this one, as I don't like that line. I think it's going to be probably Australia coming out bang in the beginning, and then Scotland's going to be working them down. They're a very tough, stubborn team. But in the end, I think the Wallaroos actually have a little more athleticism. You have at the locks, you have Sarah Nagama, for example, that really looks in the lineout to be the best lineout forward. But I mean, Scotland's going to have trouble, I think, in this one winning. I just don't think they're going to be done by 21.5 points.
It's almost
I might take a bit on Scotland here, but not much.
Yeah. So I mean, we don't have total points lines out yet, but one of the other interesting things in the ladies' game is obviously the total points, and I'm definitely going to be looking for opportunities to go unders in the ladies' game. The bookies do tend to quote a bit less, but mainly because of the kicking for post now. But also what I find, as you say, possession is so important. So teams tend to hold on to possession for a while, but they struggle. Teams don't seem to transcend from defense into attack that quickly, and by that I'm sort of watching. When a team gets you into your 22, it's bloody difficult to get out of it. You don't have a Franz Stein who can send you all the way upfield. So you kick it to the halfway line and the team run back at you. And I found there were long periods of play in some of the games, and not so much the one-sided games, but the other games without points. So I might be looking at a little bit of unders play. Do you have any idea the sort of weather conditions we can expect this weekend?
Yeah, so they're going to play at Whangarei, which is going to be more of a rich turf, a little bit heavier underfoot, not the super fast sort of 4G kind of pitches or well drained. But I think it's going to be a clash of styles. I think Australia showed it can score, and I think Scotland showed it can grind. So I think it'll go to the team that can impose the style. I think probably you're going to look at a classic Six Nations kind of side, like it used to be, Six Nations side by Scotland, and the Wallaroos trying to do like a classic Australian, let's run. So fitness, I think, is going to tell a tale here. I think the Wallaroos take more from their loss because I don't think anyone expected them to put 17 points unanswered against the Black Ferns, whereas the Scotland-Wales match was sort of a classic Celtic mashup, from Six Nations. So, I think this is also do or die for both teams, right? So, you would think that the team that's more at home, which is the Wallaroos, will be a lot of the Australian women are actually from New Zealand or have Pacific Island heritage, and I think that at some point is going to kick in this tournament. And I think this is the match it will.
Right, let's go on to the next game. We've got an identical handicap here. USA minus 21.5 against Japan. I must say this was two teams that I didn't really get a chance to watch other than a bit of highlights this weekend. The USA, though, were upset in terms of the betting. They were favourites to beat Italy, and they were beaten there. They now play against Japan, who I think the handicap against Canada was about 36, and that's exactly where the margin sort of ended up. It was something like 41-5 or something like that. What do you make of this one? Can the USA bounce back with a big win here?
Yeah, I think the USA had a couple of really unlucky things in Italy, the Italy match. I'm not sure it was really a reflection of their quality. I think Japan is the perfect antidote for anyone suffering from scoring malaise. So I would say that the USA is going to score here. It was a bad loss to Italy. It shows that USA is probably not a real challenger for the Cup. But I think in this one it's going to be a spanking, and I would expect a lot of points to be scored. There's just some speed imbalances in the women's game. You can have a team be bigger and faster, and this is the case. In this case, Japan's going to struggle to stay in front of some of those American backs.
Right. Well, Chaz just making the point. A couple of good wins last week. Johannes is on the green. USA should cover easily. Chaz mentioned Fiji -4, the best bet. That's, of course, the last game we're going to discuss now. Harry and I had a bit of a chat on that before the show. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. We both kind of agreed that wasn't the easiest game in the world to handicap. Let's move on to the next game. And France, who took a long time to break down South Africa, they didn't beat the handicap in the end, although they made a good run of it towards the end. They play against England. Now, I switched on the England game half time, and I think it was something like 27-14 or 34-14 or something like that to the English.
Yeah.
You're giving them a real go. But I dozed off because, bear in mind, it was 3:30 in the morning or something ridiculous. South African time. I dozed off and I woke up after 60 minutes and England were on 60-something. They absolutely ran right. Now, I must be honest, I looked at this handicap and my first thought was England on the minus. Where are you on this one, Harry?
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, this is a very interesting Le Crunch. And the problem here is that the French kind of really raised their game when they play England to a point that's hard to understand. Whatever the animosity in the men's game between England and France is, I would double it for the women. There's bad blood here, and there's the bad blood's even in the coaches. So yeah, you're going to expect some fire here. I actually think this might be the first match of the Women's World Cup where there's a card or two, there might be a fight, there might be a few punches thrown, but these women do not like each other. It's not a game, it's for real. So I think that usually makes things tight when you have teams like that. So you would expect maybe the first 20, 30 minutes to go without too many scores, not too many tries. But then the French have a weird thing where they're either going to play really well that day or they're going to play absolutely shit. I mean, I'm talking dog shit. So we don't know how that's going to play out. Usually in the French game, you can see that in the first 30 minutes. If they're making all the cover tackles, if there's a second line of defense, and if people are getting wide to clean rucks, hello, you're going to have a real crunch. If in the first 30 minutes you have, one of the English best players just run through the midfield, it's going to be a good night France. Right,
interesting. Yeah, I'm lining up England there, I must say. The French started off quickly against South Africa, but I suppose, quite impressed with the way South Africa pegged them back. It wasn't good news for me. I was on France over 7.5 tries or something ridiculous, and I mean, it soon became apparent they weren't going to get it despite the strong start. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I'm going England there. Let's go on to the next game. It's Italy plus 11.5 against Canada. Canada, of course, with a comfortable win over Japan, and Italy upsetting the United States. We've got Italy on the as the underdogs again. Can they cause another upset?
No, I don't see this at all. I think Canada actually is a very physical team. They showed it. I think they're a really classy team. I actually think Canada's outright to win the World Cup is a kind of a steal as well. I've seen a lot of numbers on that, and they're attractive. Canada is a very well.
2-1. We've got scrolling at the bottom there, 22-1 to win the World Cup.
Yeah, it's not a bad one. They look like they can handle a lot of different types of play. Even I think this is going to be a good match for them, and I think Italy might have played one of their best matches, and they have that syndrome where the next week you fall off. So could be good timing for Canada. And that 11.5 is, again, that's attractive too. I don't know, maybe there's not enough attention placed on Canada, or everyone's placed their attention on England and New Zealand. But I think there's definitely a place for a Canadian final appearance here.
Right. Okay. So Canada, nice firm pick on the handicap there. Now we're talking handicaps. How about this for a big handicap? Wales plus 46.5 in New Zealand. I mean, there's surely no respect being shown for the Welsh there.
Yeah, so, I mean, on a technical basis, I mean, for sure, New Zealand will score. They're going to score against anybody. But one would think that Wales will score a little bit too. The New Zealand midfield defense was actually very leaky. And like I said, they were fended quite easily by some Aussies. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if 46.5 makes sense. Yeah, I think New Zealand's problem on that type of bet is that they haven't shown the kind of tight defense that you would want to build that margin. I think they're going to score 50. They're going to score, sure. But what if Wales scores 2 tries and then they're going to have to go into the 60s and 70s? I don't think New Zealand's going to score 70 points against Wales. I'll say that.
Right, Chaz is saying there he definitely fancies the Welsh there. Pressure on the professional New Zealand side. Yeah, I'd have to say I'm leaning the 46.5. The only thing that has me hesitating there is I think about that handicap in the Australia game was 28.5 points. And look, New Zealand failed to get it. But the reality is they had a penalty near the end where if they chose to kick it out, they could have gone, they came back from 17-0 down to almost beat a 28-point handicap. And it does make me think that I'd be very wary of backing against it. But 46.5 just feels to me 7 or 8 to 10 points probably a little bit high for this game. So I think it's going to be a game. I look at the points lines. But, if I was going to pick a handicap, I would definitely be on the plus there. And, Harry, that brings us to the final game of the week. And this is a fascinating one for me, not just because I am South African. We've got Fiji up here against South Africa now. Let me start with South Africa. I watched the whole game against France. I actually lost money because I opposed the South Africans in that game. But I was quite impressed. I know we don't have, I don't think, a lot of resources pumped into our rugby. And I thought they looked very well coached. I was very impressed with the scrums and the tight five. And then we had a couple of key players who performed pretty well. I enjoyed the fullback. And also we've got a hard-running first centre who seems to know only one way, and that's the crash ball, but looked pretty effective. And then you've got Fiji. I didn't see all of their game, but the tries that I watched, their backline looked flippin' impressive. So we got 2 very contrasting styles, I think, going against each other. And do you think the bookies have got this right? I struggled to handicap this game. I honestly couldn't handicap it.
I don't know, man. I don't know. This is one that's making me really wonder. I would like to combine these 2 teams. I think if Fiji and South African team combines, they're going to win the whole cup. There's a lot. There's like each team has about 6 or 7 really, really good players, but then they still have some players that are still pretty weak, who are going to make a lot of mistakes or not up to the speed or the fitness level. Fiji looked like they got bored and they fell off because they just kind of played in bursts. And then I think South Africa has some players that can still be overpowered. And then you have some others that are just like world beaters. So I would really not put anything on this thing if it were me. I'm literally looking forward to this match more than all the other matches. And yet I don't know how to handicap it, and I wouldn't.
Your Chaz is quite confident on Fiji, and I know our good friend the conductor, he was all over Fiji, or he really liked Fiji in the early. I think the early lines in New Zealand came out about -3.5. It subsequently moved up to 7.5. But I'm with you here. I'm battling on this one. I honestly can see South Africa winning it, but I can also see Fiji running away with it. I just haven't seen enough of the teams. But one thing I am probably going to take a bit of a view on this of, I might get involved in the points or something, but actually shout South Africa home and hope they perform well here. Now, Harry, if I have to press you on the games that we've discussed, what do you think stands out for you as probably the best play?
Yeah, so I don't think New Zealand's going to pound Wales at the level that's been set. I think that's a good Welsh bet there. I am. My stocks are pretty high on Canada, and I think they're going to perform well. It's a very professional outfit in some ways. In some ways, it's still amateur, but they're just got a really great spirit and they're physical. And I think in In tournaments like this, we have back-to-back weeks. You're going to go with a physical team who can just march down the field and put their stamp on it. And then I'm also, quite frankly, pretty good on Wallaroos. I think the Wallaroos did take a lot out of that first match. I think, in a way, when you play the best team, or maybe the best team at home, and you put the fear of God in them in the first 20 minutes, you realize you can play with anyone. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of the idea that Scotland might have played the best match of its tournament, lost, and then they go and just shit the bed. So, yeah, the rest of the matches, I wouldn't put a lot on England, France, because I don't know which French team shows up, and I just cannot, for the life of me, figure out Fiji and South Africa.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Johan coming in and saying he likes the bigger Wales plus. So in other words, what he's going to do there is go for a smaller price, take probably Wales plus 52.5, and then a smaller minus on Canada. I think were they 11.5 Canada or something along those lines. He'll probably take sort of a minus 6.5, and you'll get the double at around even money. So certainly a nice strategy. I wanted to say to you before giving your bets, no pressure, the fact that I chose your bet last week for my best bet in the newsletter, no pressure at all. But I think it's safe to say that, this week, perhaps isn't as standout a bet as there was last week. No. Although Wales, let's face it, Wales were pushed all the way. The money came for them. I mean, when we spoke on the show, they were like 2-point underdogs, and by the time the game started, they were 3-point favourites. I mean, punters, everyone just agreed that Wales were the bet. And yes, they arrived, but only just. But there's nothing this week that really jumps out at me that says it's obviously wrong. So, yeah, it's going to be a case of perhaps getting a feeling closer to the game and getting involved.
Yeah, the only thing that was a very tough one. I was sweating, and I was texting you panicking. But so we haven't had really a big upset, and World Cups never go by without an upset. So there's a part of my upset brain that's looking for the upset this week, but I think maybe it's next week, not this one. I do think most of these are going to go to form, and it's going to be a matter of can someone actually. Can New Zealand score that much in front of Wales? I mean, can they really keep Wales out of their try line? Because New Zealand gave up some pretty soft tries to the Wallaroos, and it's hard to fix that kind of defense in 1 week.
That's it. Yeah, well, really looking forward to the weekend's action. Just in closing, Harry, anything stand out for you on the rest of the weekend, rugby-wise, or any other sport that you're looking forward to?
I'm just waiting for the next English club to fail. They're playing such entertaining rugby that for some reason it's not translating into ticket sales and merchandise. I don't know, but I would say this does make the URC look a little better. So, there's no lack of crowds there, and it looks like it's going great. I'm looking forward to the URC matches this week for sure.
Excellent. Also looking forward to it. Harry, thanks very much for joining us. We'll certainly be looking forward to chatting to you later in the World Cup, and also staying in touch on Twitter, of course. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for the boys who joined in the live chat. And if you are watching the show afterwards, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification button to get notified when we go live. Thanks, everybody.